Hey everyone, welcome to another Toolbox Tech Talk. Yeah. As you might have seen from the promos, today we're going to the dark side. Generators. Yeah, generators is what it's all about. Not just the generator itself, but fuel and what you run them on, and are they clean? Are they green? So to answer a lot of those questions, I've got my good friend as a guest today. This is Badrea, also known as Rez from Murmura Co-op. Now, g'day Rez.
Hello everyone, how are you, Glenn? Thank you for inviting me.
No worries. So how's it going up there on the mountain?
It's going good now. The weather has cleared. Well, it's good for us, you know. The water only goes down from us, so it's gonna be a while until we have to use our boats. But just in case I'm getting my boat ready, you never know.
Oh, Noah's Ark. Oh, right. How many of us can get onto it though? That's the key thing.
Well, depends on how much money you have, because it's not going to be free. You know?
I'll give you a gold chain.
You're probably going to be on the priority list, you know. So
that sounds good. Hey, a lot of our audience don't know what's been going on in Victoria, and particularly around Melbourne and the eastern suburbs. Is that we had this big storm last week. One of those 1 in 20, 30 years sort of storms. It's flattened trees everywhere. But fortunately, up here on top of a mountain at Mount Tulibawong, we were pretty okay, weren't we?
Yeah, it was it was a lot of rain, and I actually had a little bit of water coming into the house. Not much, but enough to put a couple of jars and a tea towel, because it was windy and raining, so it was pushing water into everywhere. So we had a little bit of water. As you know, I live in a mud brick house, so it's beautiful, but it's got a few gaps here and there where the fresh air comes in, and
the water sometimes
other things,
gets in too.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
No, we were good.
So, what was, for those who don't know about where I live, and which is the same co-op that Rez lives on, he's only about 100 metres away from me further up the hill, is that we're an off-grid community. We've been off-grid since 1974. And when there's a big event like this storm, which knocked out the power to 175,000 homes, there was like 5,500 emergency call-outs. We didn't even notice, except a few of us who had Optus telephones noticed our telephones weren't working, because we've all got power and water and food, and quite a lot of us have electric vehicles. We didn't worry about fuel, so it had very little impact here at Murmura Co-op. But I know for people down in the valley, it's been a big deal. Some of them, lost their roofs, had trees fall on them. We've been without power for days. Power's come back on to Healesville, I believe, yesterday, so that's starting to come back to normal. But it's an interesting contrast.
Yeah. But it's clearing now, and it looks like the weather is gonna improve. There might be a few showers, but all in all, sun is gonna start shining again.
So you've been here for a couple of years now. I'm just trying to remember how long it's been. It's 2 or 3 years. And I just kind of wonder what your experience is, having moved from Sydney and now that you're living off grid. Oh, I think we may have lost Rez. He's just gone into that freezy mode. Well, what I might do is just wait for him to come back, and I'll just take him off screen for a second while the screen reorientates itself. So, just to give you a bit of a background on Rez. So Rez is a bit of a engine whisperer. Like he's just amazing when it comes to understanding engines. Oh, Rez, good, got you back.
Yes.
I was just giving you a bit of a promo about being an engine whisperer.
Oh, yeah, that's one of my first loves. I worked on engines since I was like 8, so I'm a bit passionate about engines.
So
and electrical motors at the same time. Huh.
That's good. So you moved off grid to Maruma a few years ago. How's
Yes.
that experience been?
Good, good. All challenging. It's not for everyone. But I always wanted to live closer to nature, reconnect with nature. And lucky, I found a beautiful community at Mora Mora with beautiful friends, almost like a family, I would say. So yeah, it's amazing. Yes, there are challenges, but they are also empowering because you learn to deal with stuff for yourself. And then there are times like this when we had a huge crisis and we had people from the other world to come and take showers at our places. People that live off grid, so they could not live in their homes because they had no heating and everything, nothing. So they came and to the safe haven of grid people. So that was amazing to see
Yeah,
how good it is to be in control of your life. And you know, you've been here for how long did you lived off grid, Glenn?
18 years here, but
Huh,
off grid 30 years. Yeah.
there you go. So you know very well. So it's yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. Once you get over and I'm not saying it's not comfort because probably you have some story to tell about how off-grid living was 30 years ago when you had like 12 volts batteries with the like 50 watts solar panels and it take a week to charge that battery. Now we have comfort, like now we have everything. I have three bathrooms in my house off grid.
I think I've got to tell my story then. So, like 30 years ago, when I was living in King's Cross in Sydney, my partner then at the time decided that we should leave the big nasty city and go and live in the bush. And we bought this little house off Men at Work. It was their little getaway house in the hills behind Sydney in the Blue Mountains, and a very quite isolated spot. And I must admit, I didn't even notice it didn't have mains power. We were so sort of taken by this beautiful little house in the middle of the bush, and so we basically had a generator. All we had was an 11 kVA diesel generator, and they'd been spending $250 a week on fuel to run that generator. I mean, they're a wealthy band, it was their little getaway house. They didn't care. So I started thinking about, using electricity instead of diesel as the main source of energy, but we didn't have solar panels. So I just bought 3 car batteries, would take them to the city, charge them up, then bring them back up in the front seat of the car, and then use them to run a few lights as long as I could until they ran out of puff, and then take them back to the city when I went back the following week. So really just shuffling energy in a lead acid battery with a vehicle was how I started. And you more or less what you said was true thereafter. Just started with some very little panels and just a few old batteries and slowly grew from that to, like you, now it's just a kind of normal home with all the normal appliances, but no reliance on a utility.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so it's good to have no reliance on utilities for hot water, electricity, heat, and everything. And we are very blessed here because we have practically an unlimited source of renewable energy, wood, wind, solar. Not so much hydro. We drink the hydro, but it's good enough that we have. Um, yeah, so yeah, it's great. It's been a good experience. I'm
Mm.
happy that I made the choice. We made the choice, me and my partner. So we're
Yeah,
happy.
cool. So my 7-year-old son the other day, when I was picking up from his mum's place, where he's been sitting in the dark for 2 days with no heating and no lights, said to Daddy, "Oh, it's good to come to your place because you've got infinite power, the sun." I like that one.
Yeah, yeah, we do have an infinite heat with the forest.
That's right.
Yeah, so many dead trees. We don't even have to cut new trees. That's it's quite good.
Well, we should start to veer towards our main subject matter today, which is talking about,
Yep,
fuel and talking about generators. And, for many
generators.
people, generators are the dark side because, they generally are noisy, sometimes unreliable, use fuel that's generally fossil fuels, that's a bit polluting, and so they're not really a nice thing to associate with clean, green, renewable energy. But there are better choices, aren't there?
Yes, they are. So, but first of all, um, a diesel generator is at this moment the only technology that can give you from 0 volts to full power within minutes, even if it's dark, even if there's no wind, there's no water, nothing. If you have a diesel generator, you start it and you have electricity, period. Now, you have options to run that diesel generator cleaner. People can, that's an easy do it yourself. A lot of people are into making biodiesel, so you can very easy start making your own biodiesel and use waste oil. And there's few ways. It's internet is full of instructions on how to make biodiesel, and just by using biodiesel, you reduce the emissions, the harmful emissions, for about 40%. Just by using biodiesel, simple as that. And you can make your own biodiesel. Yes, they are noisy, but you can make a special dedicated room. Just imagine the big super yachts that cost millions of dollars. They have very big diesel engines that are extremely noisy, but you don't hear anything when you are on that fancy thick deck and having your Dom Perignon in your hand, because it's there is a magic thing called noise insulation. So the materials these days that you can soundproof everything to zero, and you
It can
can
be a
use.
problem though, can't it? Because you can do too much of it. I think you had a bit of discovered that at your cluster.
Yeah,
They're a little bit overzealous in soundproofing their generator room.
yeah, but they didn't understand how to, because when you install a generator or a diesel engine or any engine into an enclosure, now you need to have an airflow, because once is the cooling that is very critical, and the other one is the air that is used in a combustion. So and the air preferably would be as cold as possible, so you can have more molecules of air going inside, so you can have a better fuel mixture. So if you put your generator in a room that is very hot and you do not design the airflow properly, you can lose up to 20% of the capacity of that generator in power, because you're going to run on hot air. You're going to run on very, very thin molecules, and you need oxygen to have a complete combustion, because it's a diesel engine, and some of them, they have just a basic. This is common rail generators are not available in a small range, unfortunately. So they're only available on a big engine. So what you have is a standard diesel that use with a pump and an injector. Sometimes there's a technology where the pump and injector are the same thing, and is the air that you get into the engine. And if the air is hot, you have because it's expanded, right? The molecules are expanded. You have less oxygen molecules that go into your combustion, and you're going to have loss of power once, and you're going to increase the emissions dramatically, because you're going to have unburned exhaust. And third, you're going to have excess carbon deposit in your engine, and that is going to decrease the service life of the engine. So
Actually, I got a question, and I think I've got a picture. This is just me trying to find some illustrated here. A common rail diesel engine. What on earth does this refer to? Common rail.
So common rail is a technology, is the new technology that the diesel engine work. If you imagine, I'll do a simple analogy. So a diesel engine, it's a compression ignition engine. So what do? You put a mixture of fuel and air, and then the piston goes up. It compresses the air. Once the air is compressed, increases the temperature. This is the law of physics, and then so some of them, so there's air going inside that is compressed, and when the air is at a certain temperature, the fuel is injected into the cylinder and starts the combustion. So this is the basically the principle of operation. Now the fuel delivery, this is where the big difference comes. The fuel delivery on the old engines was based on the pressure. So each injector would have a spring inside and a set pressure to open, say, at 190 bars. I'll give you an example. And the pump, the diesel pump, would produce, let's say, 300 bars. But when the 300 bars on the pump raises and puts the pressure in the injector, then the plunger goes off the seat at 190 bars, and then you inject the diesel into the engine, and there's your ignition after that, and your combustion.
So that's a
the
conventional.
new engines
Hang on.
are
Can you see the
electronically
picture?
controlled.
Can you see the
So
picture?
instead of having a sequential pump that was putting pressure, you had those pump rotary or inline, where you can see a lot of pipes going to each injector, and there was a timing in the pump, and sequential with the timing. You go, it will go from one cylinder to another. Now everything is electronically controlled.
Oops, we just lost Rez again. So, yeah, he was just explaining the difference between a conventional diesel injection system and a common rail diesel injection system. I had a picture up of it on the screen there just before the common rail diesel injector. Now, I know next to nothing about diesel engines other than that you need to look after them, fuel them up properly and maintain them, and you need to rate them to suit the loads properly. So that's something that when you're designing for off-grid, you do need to consider very carefully the ratio of power coming in from from the generator with respect to what your inverter charger system can draw from that. And it's probably one of the good things about modern inverter chargers is that they can blend charging batteries with supplying loads at the same time. So if you size your generator appropriately, it will always be running at a fairly constant load. Oh, we got Rez back. There we go. Got you back.
Yeah. So there's another perks of living off grid.
Yeah, I was just filling people in a little bit about sizing a generator to a load in terms of inverter chargers, and how when you have an inverter charger that's rated at, say, 10 kilowatts, it's ideal to have a generator that's got a bit of headroom above that. So it's running efficiently, but not at its maximum power the whole time.
Yeah. Yes.
Now,
So
I just had a question for you.
where
when
did
you
you lose
dropped
me?
out. I lost you. No, you were going well actually, but you couldn't hear me. I wanted to bring this picture back again. So this, can you see the common rail here?
Yes.
Okay.
That's the common rail. There's the thing at the top where all the lines are coming from to the injectors.
So the fuel pump creates a continuous pressure across all of the injectors, and the injectors are individually operated by what?
By a computer.
By
the engine. Yeah,
it's more high tech. It's not just a rotating cam or something.
Yes, and as I was saying when we dropped out, is that these injectors are very fine, so they are very critical on clean diesel. So you can't use so the microns on the rating on the filters. Everyone has a filter on my fuel filter. Well, just to give you an idea. The old fuel filter you had of your engine was 30 micron, and the fuel filters that are fitted now on the engine are 2 microns. So if you, by chance, some people just think a fuel filter is a fuel filter, and they put a cheap or aftermarket low quality, the market is full of them, that they claim that they have certain filtration, and they do have, because There's absolute filtration and nominal filtration. They tell you this filter has a 10 micron nominal filtration, which actually means the media, the paper inside, is 10 micron. But because the filter is built very bad, has a lot of gaps inside the filter. So the absolute filtration is 50 micron. So a high quality filter has the absolute and nominal values very close. Ideally, it would be identical, but in real life, it's almost, it would be very expensive to achieve that.
Right. This is a bit embarrassing. I hadn't realized that a filter actually mattered really that much. I thought it was just something to get the big bits of dirt out of the fuel. But you're talking about 2 microns on a common rail.
Well, imagine this. You know particle velocity. So the pressures in these common rail engines are huge compared to traditional diesel. So a particle that was harmless, that now travels 100 times faster, the velocity of that particle is huge. So it can actually scratch components in a fuel system, which is in the injector, because the fuel is pressurized into the common rail, and when it goes through those nozzles, if you have any particle that is so you're running you should not have anything bigger than 2 micron. You have a poor filter that is 30 micron, and then you have a tank that has a little bit of a rust or aluminum oxide, which we know is very, very hard because they make sandpapers out of aluminum oxide. That little particle, when it's going through the injector, it will scratch the injector. It's not maybe. It will scratch the injector, and they're very expensive. And the thing is with these common rails, if one injector fails, the engine won't start because you lose pressure in the whole rail.
It's all for one, basically. Yeah. So if one's leaking, you lose pressure across all of them.
Yeah, and if you lost one because you had dirty fuel, most likely you have damage on the other injectors. So when you change an injector, you have to change all of them. Otherwise, and they're not cheap. They're not cheap.
All right, so I think you've made a good segue for me to talk a bit about the diesel bug. And I remember when you first mentioned this to me, I thought you were kind of talking about something like an insect that swam around inside the diesel that you could see, but it's not quite that, is it?
No. Diesel bug is simply put is you make your sourdough. You have your sourdough starter. And in order to make a sourdough starter, all you have to do is get some flour, some water. You put them in a tray, you leave them on a counter, and then it picks up wild yeasts and bacteria and stuff from the air, which are all over us, and they start a culture. Well, same thing is the diesel bug. So it's a specific, it's not a specific, it's about 200 species of microbes, bacteria, and fungus, all called diesel bug. And what's happening once they get into your diesel, into your tank, if they find water, because they live on oxygen and hydrocarbons from the diesel, and all the diesel tanks make a little bit of condensation. And what they do, because they in the air, they attach to the walls above the fuel level, right? Where you have all the, and you have these water droplets on the tank, and then you have your vapors from the diesel. So that's enough for them to start colonies, and they grow on your walls. That's why you have to keep your head as little as possible in your tank, in your diesel tank. You got to have your diesel tank full most of the time. When is
so
in
that's
storage.
Another tip is actually an empty tank is more likely to grow more diesel.
Oh yes, of course. And what's happening when they grow in a bigger colony, they just drop to the bottom of the tank. If they find any water on the bottom, they start forming colonies, and then you can end up on your tank with something like this. Let me show you what we have, that's on the bottom of your tank.
Yuck.
And that is the diesel bug alive. So this is from a boat that I've done many years ago when I was at the beginning with my clean diesel business. Um, so this boat particularly had about 2 inches, 50 mils of that thing on the bottom of the tank. So yeah, it's very nasty. It feels like a gel, and it's alive. And no biocides, as people keep putting biocides in the tanks, and no biocides are gonna kill this. And I'm gonna explain why. So when the colonies are growing, they create an outer shell of dead cells, just like your skin. Okay, so they are alive inside, and you keep putting biocides, and they protected by this shield. When the colony is big enough, no biocides are going to affect them. So the only way to keep a diesel bug out of your tank is to have the tank as dry as possible, recirculate the fuel, or have some sort of polishing filtration fitted to the tank to do it constantly. And now you probably might ask, why is the diesel bug happening now and why did it not happen in the past? Because I can read your mind.
Yeah, you can read my mind. I was going, well, have you just invented this bug and put it in everyone's tank, or has it been there all the time?
I wish I did. So, but I came with the solution to clean it without chemicals. That's another story. We'll talk later about that. So, when we started to be concerned about harmful emissions to the, I'm not going to get into very technical stuff, just basic so people have an idea. So diesel used to have a lot of sulfur in it. Okay, so if you have ever been to a trip on sulfurous mountains, you see there's no vegetation there because sulfur inhibits the growth of life on our planet. It might grow on different planets, but on our planet where you have a lot of sulfur, you don't have pretty much nothing growing. Now, when the emissions have become stricter and stricter, they started to remove the sulfur from the diesel slowly. So diesel went to a point now where it's called ultra low sulfur diesel, ULSD, and it has no protection for microbial growth. So now anything can grow in a diesel, just like it grow in your jar with food. So there's nothing to kill it. And the only thing that would kill it now would be the biocides that people putting in their tanks like crazy. And actually that is not good because those chemicals have been removed from the diesel to make it cleaner for the environment. And from selfish reasons, some people just putting them back in at higher levels than actually they were before. And people, just they want their stuff to work regardless. So we probably, it's going to be a while until everyone is going to become responsible and really care about the environment and do the right thing. So yeah, that's why diesel bug is growing and is not going anywhere. On the contrary, biodiesel is added now to diesel, and that's way more hygroscopic, attracts more water, about 30 times more.
So hang on, so water is part of the problem. Is the combination of water,
the biggest
hydrocarbons, problem. And the bug.
Yeah, and another thing that is not told a lot or not understood even by a lot of mechanics, because they think if you have water on the bottom of your tank, this is when you're going to have the diesel bug. Well, water exists in diesel in 3 stages. One is free water, which is on the bottom of the tank. You can separate it. If you put diesel and water in a container, you're going to see a clear demarcation, because water is heavier than fuel, than diesel, which is a light oil, and diesel is going to float on top of the water. If you shake that very, very, very hard, you're going to create something milky that is called emulsion between water and diesel. So water can also be emulsified, but also if you take a clean sample of diesel and there's nothing in it, but you put a sensor that measures the relative humidity, you're going to find the amount of dissolved water into the diesel, which is already there. The water molecules are there, but they have not separated yet. Now, diesel has a limit based on the temperature or when the water is going to drop on the bottom of the tank. The higher the temperature, the more dissolved water is going to be. The lower the temperature, the more separation is going to occur. So that water is always inside the diesel. And at some stage on a cold day, it's going to drop on the bottom of the tank. And if those bugs are there waiting for some food, they're going to start, I should say, intercourse. And they're gonna grow families, and they're gonna be very, very happy to block your filters. And another thing, so people think they just block filters. Well, not only that.
We've actually got someone making a comment on this from Facebook. I'll just bring it on screen. So they're also saying that dirty fuel damages the suction control valve as well.
Yes. So dirty fuel, it damages fuel components by the following meaning. Why? So when the diesel bug is eating the oxygen from the water becomes rich in hydrogen, which means becomes acid. So the pH of the water drops to approximately, can go as low as 4, which that's a mild acid. Now, when you have metal parts in a fuel system, we know what acid does to metal, because they have not made the fuel system from stainless steel yet, because it would be very expensive, or other materials. So that diesel that now has a low pH, the water that we're talking about, the water that is in a dissolved state, has a low pH. So basically, imagine you have little molecules of acid that are always in contact with the inside of your fuel system, from the tank to the injectors. And the more they stay there, the more they start corroding things. And that leads to failure of injectors, valves, fuel pump, any system that is exposed to this condition.
Wow, it's a problem that just compounds, starting with taking out the insecticides or biocides, as you call them, from the fuel to make them cleaner and less polluting the environment, and then you end up with the bug creating all this cascading problems based on temperature, volume of tank, the amount of moisture condensation inside it. So, I mean, let's take it one step further. Can you do anything about it other than keep your tank full and use your fuel and drain the water out?
Well, you have to kill the bug, all right, or keep the tank. It's not practical to do it this way. We have a technology that we use, but mainly for big storage tanks at data centers. So I'll give you a bit of a history of how I came up with this technology and how I found the diesel bug. So
I might bring a picture up of this equipment. Is that a good time?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. So I was in Spain in 2009 when I was working in the marine industry, and this is the first time when I've encountered the diesel bug. And there were not much information at the time. People were even calling it algae at the time. Like they thought it's algae. It's something that grows on, and not many people were making the connection because the low sulfur content and what was happening. So it was crazy, and and then I did a bit of a reading. The people in America, because they've changed the ULSD first in the world, and they were the first ones to encounter the problem. They had some information at the time about why it is because of the sulfur and the water and all that stuff, and now anything can grow pretty much inside. So this is what I thought. Well, I don't want to use chemicals. What if it's an easier way to clean the diesel bug? So I thought of all the methods that I use for disinfection, and I stopped to the UV light. But UV light, the one that is used to sanitize water, it's very powerful, and diesel is not UV stabilized. So as soon as I start trialing, because I had a sample with the diesel bug and test strips to see there's microbial growth, but you can see it, and trying to kill that, I also oxidized the diesel, so the diesel turned very black because the UV light is very powerful. So then I thought, okay, well, it killed the diesel bug, but also destroyed the diesel. And then I started some proper lab trial tests. I had some friends back in my country of origin, Romania, and for a few years I did a lot of testing and modifying this UV light to make it strong enough to kill the diesel bug and weak enough so it doesn't affect the diesel. And this is how clean diesel technology was born, because I've developed this way of killing the diesel bug. So basically, what it does, that machine that you see there, is every 3 months it connects to the tank. It's got a lot of sensor. It measures the relative humidity in the diesel. It measures the particle content, any water. It's got a very sophisticated cleaning algorithm. It's got a diesel bug light that is killing it's called the debug. And you just connect it to the tank, and when the tank is clean and all the diesel bug has been annihilated and everything, it comes out green, and you move it to the next tank, and it keeps the fuel compliant, because there's a lot of things about compliance on the fuel. So not many people in Australia, at least, do the compliance test, because it's $2,500. That's the price of the lab. And if you would have to pay that to see if your fuel is compliant, it would be very expensive for a data center that has 100 tanks. And the fuel can get out of the compliance in 3 months. So imagine doing that's 10 grand in tests alone for the just to make sure. But my technology has built in all the stuff, and it works by keeping the fuel fresh all the time.
Right. While you're talking,
So,
I'm
yeah.
just scrolling some of your website so we can see some of the solutions. So it's a fully automated system. You don't have to go and manually do this process once that piece of equipment is permanently connected.
Yeah, the machine has built in all the knowledge of how to clean the diesel, how to particulate cleaning, diesel bug cleaning, absolutely everything. You don't need to know anything. You just plug it in, press a button, and wait until the screen turns green, and it's done. It's made simple.
Wow, that's cool. So let's think about applications for this. Now, is this something that someone who's got a small diesel generator on an off-grid system would think about getting?
No, this is the technology is very expensive. It's not. It's very sophisticated. So it's you gotta have a lot of diesel in storage, like the data centers we working with, to make it worth. For the regular Joe that has a diesel generator, there's few ways to keep your generator. So first of all, let's start with the diesel. Let's start with the supply. So you have to buy diesel from a reputable supplier. It's very important. Like you got it from a petrol station or somebody that the mini tankers that deliver the diesel to us on the mountain here, because they use a lot of diesel. So that's the first step, to make sure that the diesel that is supplied to you is fresh. Then the tank system that you have, it has to have a water drain, so you can drain that water uh, as it accumulates by condensation. Now, there's a trick, because that water drain has to be on the lowest part of the tank where the water goes. Because I've seen so many tanks with the water drain that would leave up to 5 liters of water in a 100-liter tank, because it's not directed to the lowest point of the tank. So you have a water drain, you drain something out of it, and you think, oh, I'm fine. If 2 drops of water are left in there, that's enough food to create 1 kilo of diesel bug. 1 kilo, which means it will cover the whole floor, the oxygen in there. So it's a it's it's a lot of stuff about this diesel bug. So drain the water. Try to use the diesel. I know people want to save money and say, "Oh yeah, I have the diesel." Get rid of it. Don't let it sit in your tank for more than 6 months. Just run your generator. Make a plan where you can refuel with fresh diesel. So I have 100 tank capacity. I want to replace 50% of it every 6 months. So I have to use 50 liters of diesel. Then you work out how much your generator works. So on my website, there's I have on resources there. There's a generator diesel consumption that you can find out how much diesel you're gonna use on a quarter load, half load, 3/4. You can figure how much load you have on your generator, and you can work out how much diesel you need to burn, and you either burn it every day a little bit or once a week. Uh, ideally, you want to move the diesel around. I would do it once a week, because when you do that, there you go. When you do that, you recirculate the diesel through your engine, because you're not using all the diesel, and a lot of the diesel it's getting returned to the tank. So all the dirt that is sucked from where your fuel pickup is, it doesn't, unfortunately can't clean the rest of the tank, but at least that area, it's kind of filtered, and you get rid of some of the contaminants as well. And then you top it up, and make sure you keep an eye on the condition of the diesel. There's ways to make sure. People use on marine applications mostly, but not only. They use uh, diesel filters with water separating bowl. There's a clear bowl underneath where you can see the water. Well, and people think, if I see water, that I have water in my tank. If I don't see water in that, I don't have water in my tank. Well, that is not true, because your fuel pickup, according to the standards of tank manufacturing, is at about 25 millimeters from the bottom of the tank. So if you see water in your filter, it means you have 25 milliliters of millimeters, yeah, 2.5 centimeters of water in the whole tank. So those filters are not a good indication whether or not you have water in your tank. The best way is to find the lowest point of your tank, and if you can, otherwise try to get if you have access to your tank, get a pipe, not a hose, because a hose is flexible, and using a suction device of some sort, you can put it into a jar and create some vacuum. Move that on the bottom of your tank, trying to suck. It has to be a very little. You don't have to make a big pipe. Just a 4 mil pipe, copper pipe, because it's flexible. You can and try to suck from whatever you can access to see if there's any water, because you might have bellies and stuff like that. Another option, people use water socks. Water socks is basically a polymer into a piece of cloth that, in contact with water, absorbs the water. It swallows, and you take it out, and you think you've drained the water. So they work perfectly if you put them where the water is, and the only access to the tank most of the time is where your filling point is. And if that's not the lowest point of the tank, you won't have any water there. So you're going to put that sock. It's going to stay dry because the water is at the other side of the tank.
So this water sock sounds interesting. It's more sophisticated than just a clothing sock, I imagine.
No. It's a sock filled with a special polymer that absorbs the water, and that's it. It's a sponge. It's a sponge, but you got to put it where the water is, not just anywhere. Because
is it reusable?
No.
Okay.
The bottom of the tank is not flat because it's not machined. All right. It's like this. It's a steel or aluminum or stainless steel welded, so it's uneven. So if you have 1 centimeter belly somewhere, you can have 1 liter of water sitting there, creating a big colony of diesel bug. So you need to agitate the fuel if possible. Boats have this because when they run, the fuel is agitated all the time. So then puts everything in suspension, and that's why they block the filters. You see boats blocking the filters more often than a stationary tank. And speaking of which, the technology that we showed on Clean Diesel, the machine we have, that also agitates the fuel in a tank artificially. So it's got 2 pumps, and it creates a high flow. It reverses the flow, and it goes puts everything in suspension, and then starts cleaning it, because otherwise you're just clean fuel, and there's no dirt coming into the fuel.
You got to kind of mix it up to get it out, to get the dirt out.
You got to mix it up. You got to put it in suspension, and then you want to clean it. Otherwise, you won't clean it.
Now, Rez, we've got another question from our Facebook users. So this person's actually backtracking a bit, because when you dropped out before, I was talking a little bit about sizing generators to an inverter charger. And this Facebook user points out that governors and droop are also very important, especially running parallel with AC inverters as well, often overlooked. You can run synchronized solar and generator well if set up properly. So I guess what they're talking about is that where you have an interactive inverter that parallels with a generator, so they're working in unison, if there is droop in terms of voltage on the generator, the inverter has to follow it down, which means you're getting a poor quality power. And also that maintaining that synchronization can drift. So if frequency is too unstable, they may not be able to stay in sync, and therefore the generator will be disconnected.
Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you fine.
Yeah. So I'm facing that problem now for the last 2 days, or 3 days, I should say, when we had the bad weather and everything. Our generator, because it's got a mechanical governor, and it's a spring, and it has that problem because we used a lot of power, and it either goes too high, too low. So see, if you would have an EFI engine, a common rail diesel, where the computer it's synchronized with your inverter by a third-party computer that gets the data from the inverter, and then you create an algorithm. Then you can adjust the load on your generator that won't miss a bit. It will just work perfectly. So this is a problem that a lot of people face, and Actually, I'm thinking of finding a solution that would be retrofitted to a normal generator, because you can do it on a common rail. You have all the data there. You just uh, piggyback onto the CAN bus or whatever protocol has, get all your data, and then you know how to adjust the fuel ratio. It's not that simple, but it's doable.
Hang
But
on,
I'm
see if I
thinking
can
of,
understand.
of
I just want to summarize, see if I understand what you've been saying, is that having a feedback system that allows the generator's fuel supply to respond to the load, or is it the other way around, that the load adjusts to the generator's capacity and doesn't cause droop?
no, you just controlling on the generator. So if you have a generator that is doing 50 hertz at 1500 rpm, very simple. That's the basic, and you have your governor that is going to go up and down. But if you have sudden increases in load, for instance, you have a splitter, see, like we have here, and the batteries are low, and they charging. They're about 50 volts, and then you have a log splitter, and your inverter is set to cut down at 44 volts. The moment you start that log splitter, you're going to have a drop in voltage below 44 volts, and your inverter is going to shut down. The generator doesn't even have time to see what's happening. So that's one scenario where this is at the inverter side, that has to be controlled and regulated there. That's probably more of your area or expertise. If I was me, I would put some big capacitors. I would put a capacitive something buffer there, controlled, so it keeps the voltage stabilized, a regulator of some sort, and against these big drops. And the other one is the generator. If it's got a mechanical governor with springs and all that stuff, and centrifugal, so it's mechanical, it's not electronically controlled. As the load increases, the speed drops. You go, it does all that all the time. So and with the speed, we lose power and frequency, and that also messes with the inverter, because the inverter goes, I don't need 44 hertz. I need 48, between 48 and 52, and sometimes you can drop with that, and depends on how. Yes, so somebody makes a very nice comment here about the batteries. So that's good. If your batteries are in very good shape, they will do that.
Yes, so I think what Ray's pointing to is where you've got an interactive inverter that can draw from a generator and supply the loads at the same time, and determine the ratio of those two. And so if your generator's starting to struggle, they can reduce the charging rate to the battery system. So the battery becomes kind of like a capacitor. We've got a follow-up one here. So this is from Bill. G'day, Bill. Bill asks Glenn, for small-scale users, there is an easy way to avoid all of this. Store your diesel in airtight vessels and purge the air from the vessel with argon. It's heavier than air and won't float away. Do you know anything about this?
So no, this is something. It makes sense, but this won't be for the average user. Because if I tell my neighbor Peter, Peter, you need to put argon in your diesel tank, he's gonna think I'm swearing at him, because he's never heard of argon. He thinks it's a planet, like some sort of Asgard. Is Asgard the same as Argon, or they are on the same realm? So yes, there's many ways of doing this, and you can keep but the most important is moisture. So that's the thing. Moisture is very important, and unfortunately, we cannot have. There is not a technology at the moment. I've been thinking of it for years, but it's very difficult to So you have dehydrators for oils. Okay, a dehydrator, it's something that removes water, this dissolved water from hydraulic oils, because then you have other problems with lubrication and things like that. So what do you do? Basically, they get the oil, they heat it up to a certain extent. Water has a different boiling point than oil, and obviously the evaporation. So they put the oil into a container, they heat it up, they put a vacuum, and then they extract those water vapors out of it. Beautiful, and they dehydrate the. That's good, but unfortunately with diesel, you are not allowed to put any heat onto the diesel because it's a fuel and it's considered flammable. Most of us, we know that you can some of us, we know that you can have a cigarette and put it in gasoline and it won't burn. Okay, because you don't have a spark. You need for combustion, you need oxygen and a spark and the fuel. But ambers are not a spark, so you can't really, especially diesel, you can weld onto a diesel tank and nothing is going to happen. But the regulations, yeah, I know. But the regulations state that you're not allowed to do any type of heating onto the fuel, so that technology cannot be used for diesel. So you have to find a different way to heat the diesel and lower the pressure to allow the water to evaporate. But that would be very, very expensive, and it's not worth it. There are ways to do it at home. It's You can use, there's special materials that are hydrophobic. One of them, and you can probably buy it online. It's a stainless steel coated with the Teflon. So what that would do, if you get a very, very fine mesh, you can run it through that, and then it will remove, the water will separate, and only
Right.
diesel will go.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Like a
We
sieve.
used to
Yep.
we used to have, when I was a kid. I told you I started with engines when I was 8 because I did go-karting, and we used to dry our racing fuel. So we would use a special old technique. We would use the skin of a deer, and we would use that. That was the water separator element. We would put gasoline, and overnight it will filter all the water out of the gasoline. So we would have pure dry gasoline that later we would mix with a bit of acetone to increase the octane, and some castor oil, and we would make a very fancy two-stroke fuel, racing fuel for our go-karts.
Okay, speaking of mixing fuels, so Ray, g'day Ray, good to have you back. Says Alpine fuel uses kerosene, or uses kerosene to keep the engine from freezing in the cold. The same can be applied to keep moisture out. What do you think of this?
Well, the kerosene comes to the same problem with the diesel bug, because actually the bug first developed into kerosene. So it actually is the kerosene bug. So because we're trying here to solve the diesel bug, and we try to eliminate all the factors that are, and the first logical one is food, water, because we can't eliminate the diesel.
Cool. Reds, I wanted to move on a little bit from the diesel bug. I think we've just about killed it.
Yeah.
Not quite. I had a few questions here generally about generators and things like generators. There's water cooled and there's air cooled. What are the pros and cons of those two choices?
Well, the air cooled generator, small scale, so you need a lot of you need a source of coolant to remove the heat that is generated by the engine. Okay, the more heat you remove from the engine, more of the heat remains inside the engine if you want, so you transform all the heat into mechanical work, so you have more power. So the cooler you keep an engine, the more power it's going to produce. Simple as that. Plus, an engine that runs very hot, the wear and tear increases exponentially with every degree above the. That's why when you design an engine, the engineers know what materials are used, what the temperature tolerances are, blah 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 blah, and they go, okay, we need a thermostat that opens at 68 and closes at this. So that's why you don't have a universal thermostat. You have, they're all different for engines, because you want to keep, this is the liquid cooled engines. So the quick answer is liquid cooling. It's better than air, and because it can do it more efficiently. Then you need a lot of air.
Yeah.
Yes, more precise control. And remember that scenario when you have a generator in an enclosed room, or even outside. So the cooling air, the cooling of the engine is dependent of the ambient temperature. If it's a cold day, beautiful. If it's winter and it's cold day, it's gonna cool it very good. But then you might have to run it in summer, I don't know, or a day that is warmer, so it's not gonna cool it because it's using the ambient temperature. While when you have a liquid cooling, that is thermostat controlled, it's got a forced fan that is gonna put enough air, and usually the fans, they go faster with or they control by a thermo switch. They go on and off, so they keep the radiator temperature at a good level, so you can cool the engine. So better options up. But for problems, as you know personally with your generator, cooling systems are usually overlooked, and they can develop corrosion. You can have leaking, so they are more prone to problems than an air-cooled engine. An air-cooled engine, it's an air-cooled engine, and if that room is designed well with proper ventilation and stuff like that, but as I said, they are smaller and usually older.
Yeah,
technologies.
I think I've got a good summary of that. So the pros and cons: air cooled really simple, so less to go wrong, but can't control thermally as well as water cooled. Water cooled can control temperatures more precisely, but more moving parts and maintenance to ensure the reliable operation. So I think what you're just starting to talk a bit about now is the importance of maintenance, because it's a machine and it's got moving parts, and all of it needs to be considered, not just the combustion chamber and the crankshaft, but it's also all the fuel supply systems and the cooling systems and the air intakes. All of that needs maintenance.
Somebody made a comment here. Would you like to put it on a screen? And I'll explain that in theory would look at as a good idea, but in practice is not, because computers and engines are cooled differently. So you can have an air-cooled computer in a data center. So a heat exchanger is air to liquid. Okay, that's a heat exchanger. It changes one air to air, liquid to liquid, air to liquid, liquid to air. Now, when they use, because there are air-cooled chillers, coolers, but the air is chilled before it enters so it's a cold air, which you don't have on a diesel engine. You can't. It would be super expensive to chill. You have to run the ambient temperature air through a chiller to make a very cold air, and then you go and run it to because your radiator is an air to the heat exchanger it's there, but actually the cooling inside the engine, because this is where people get it a bit confused. So when you have an air-cooled engine, the hottest part of the engine, it's cooled by the passing air. It's the air that removes the heat. When you have a liquid-cooled engine, even though the liquid is air-cooled, so the heat exchanger is air to liquid, the engine is cooled by the liquid that is passing the engine, is absorbing the heat, and then takes it outside to your heat exchanger, which is an air to a liquid heat exchanger in a generator. On a boat, you have a much better system where you have liquid. You have the heat exchanger, which gets seawater, which can be at 20 degrees or 10 degrees, and then that seawater cools down and removes the heat further. So there's no air involved in a boat. So you have liquid.
Right. Okay. Cool. I think that's a good summary of the pros and cons of water cooled. Now I've got one last comparison here, which is really, we're coming to the end of the show. We normally try to aim for about an hour, so we're running over time a little bit. Now you mentioned to me that I could consider, in terms of upgrading the inverter system, generator system here, a turbocharged generator. Now I hadn't really thought about turbocharging a generator. I think of that as more of a performance thing. Why would you do that?
Well, it's very simple. A turbocharged engine has more power than a naturally aspirated engine. So you have the same engine that makes 100 horsepower naturally aspirated, and if you can turbocharge it, you basically put more air into the engine, so you can put more fuel. So instead of 100 horsepower, you can develop 140 horsepower. So for the same from the same size of the engine and the same footprint, you get more power.
Is it then always a benefit to have a turbocharger?
Some generators are naturally aspirated, some generators are turbo. So if you want more power, you put a turbo. Simple as that.
Is there downsides to that?
Well, more parts, more problems. Like everything. So turbos require special maintenance. So everything that you add, see, this is the thing. This is how the world revolves around technology. We've made everything go better and everything, but we had to add more technology to it. And with more technology, there's more things to go wrong. But that's the way life goes.
We've moved on from tin cans with a piece of string to, now we've got the smart tin cans, phones with pictures and screens on them. Yeah, so more complexity, more function, but more problems. Cool. All right.
Yes.
I think we've covered most of the questions here. I'm just double checking. Kyle points out, yes, you basically get more energy out of those cubic inches of displacement with a turbocharger. So yeah, that's the plus, but more complexity. So I can see a little continuum here. At one end is a small air-cooled generating set. Then you've got a water-cooled generating set, and then you've got a turbocharged water-cooled generating set. So you're going up in complexity, but you're increasing power and thermal management accuracy.
Yes.
Great. All right. Well, one last thing, and it's probably a personal one, is you were doing some maintenance on my gen set, and you took off the radiator cap, and it had all this black gunk inside there, and you were worried that I might have a cracked head. And short of spending a lot of time taking the whole thing apart to find out, you had a rather simple way of working out if there was any exhaust gases getting into the cooling liquid.
So yeah, you did have that stuff that you have on the top of the generator. Remember, you had a radiator problem a while ago, for a while. Okay. So your generator run very, very hot for a period of time, because you have your generator cuts down on oil pressure and on temperature that is measured at certain points on the engine. And sometimes you can have an engine going very hot in some areas and not hot enough to trigger an overheat situation, because you run your engine for very long periods of time with enough water in the radiator that you had bad to make it run very hot. And I think what happened at some stage when you had the big load, a little bit of the engine went so hot that you did have a little bit of a leak when your parts expanded, and you had a little bit of a exhaust leak there that probably was just a little tiny bit that probably fixed it. It happens all the time. It fixed itself with shot, and when the engine cooled down and carbon deposits, because it's a tiny little fraction. It's not a blown head gasket where it's gone completely. It only occurred because you had your engine running very, very hot for long periods of time, and then you replace the radiator. And remember, you said you were checking, and at some stage there was no more bad stuff coming into the radiator. So that means with the new radiator and engine cooling properly, your head gasket was not putting any exhaust. So what we did, basically, we measured the air from the top of the radiator. We put it through a chemical, which changes the color if it detects any exhaust gases. Simple as that.
Yeah, it looked like a little breather on homebrew tank that lets some of the air pass through a liquid, and the liquid has a visual indicator whether there is any exhaust gases in it, and it changes color.
Yeah, it's very easy to check. So you did have a little bit of, because that hose that completely disintegrated, and all the black stuff, those are caused by the exhaust gases and their reaction with also poor quality coolant, because your radiator was leaking and you're just adding just water, probably just to top it up, not proper coolant. So
yeah, I'm feeling bad about the way that generator is being treated now. I should have known you 10 years ago when we bought it. So things like proper maintenance, using quality oils and coolants, and also checking it regularly for things like a leaking radiator hose that was causing the loss of liquid and therefore high temperatures. But somehow it survived 5,500 hours. So it's it's not been completely tragic. Pretty pleased about that. But look, we've probably coming to the end now. So Rez, thank you very much for sharing your wisdom. I think you've just shown that having someone who knows about diesel engines and fuel systems is really important if this is something that you want to offer through your business. So you're a solar installer and you sell solar and battery storage systems, and you may, for off-grid, have a generator associated with that. Make sure that component is being looked after, as well as all the electrical side that you're probably more familiar with. Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, I think we'll just finish it off here. But thanks, everyone, for turning up. And if you want to get in contact with Rez, cleandiesel.com.au, that's his website. And I'm sure he'll be happy to answer your questions there as well.
Yeah. Next time, because we so much to talk about diesel engines, maybe we have another chat in the future where we talk about biofuels and renewable. Because
I know
we talked about the dark side. We talked about the dark side. Let's talk about the green side and the possibilities of how you turn a diesel generator into a near zero emission power generation device.
Yes, that was my intent, but we just spent a lot of time on the dark side. So I'm going to have to put my white costume on, and we'll go to the light side, the green side, and have a positive story to tell on our next adventure.
Yeah. All right.
All right. Okay. See you, Rez.
Thank you. Bye-bye. See you, everyone. See you next time.
Well, that was Rez Badrea, or Rez Badrea. Thanks very much for spending the time on a Sunday to talk about diesel engines and diesel fuels. And as he pointed out, we really didn't get to the good stuff, talking about clean green diesel. I think that's going to have to be another Toolbox Tech Talk. So anyway, everyone, I'm out, and enjoy the rest of your Sunday. See ya.